Hi, I'm John Mallos. Welcome to this live edition of Connect with me on the showroom floor at Ventura TV on this Monday morning. Glad you're here. It's not on the air off the presses on this day. We're going to talk a little bit about religion and how it relates to politics. We're going to kind of intertwine the two. 436 MeTV option 11. We'll talk about national and local politics. Connect with me starts right now.
Tonight I want to discuss the importance of the television medium to the American people.
Back here on a Monday morning. Glad you're here on Connect with Me TV Fresno. A programming note for tomorrow. We're going to have a first-time guest in. Her name is Coke Hallowell. She is on the board at the San Joaquin River Parkway, and she will be talking specifically about what's going on with the parkway and a specific plot of land that's over by Palm and Knees. There's a great debate as to what to do with it, how to develop it, and all the rest. So that's tomorrow's program. And then on Wednesday, we'll have Ruthie Quinto in. She's from the Fresno Unified School District. She'll be here to talk about the potential strike and maybe a little bit about Brooke Ashton, but that's what's coming up for later this week. And then Thursday and Friday, another couple of good shows coming your way. For now, it's Comcast Channel 375 as usual. It's Comcast Cable TV. It's a live television call-in program, 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. And if you don't have Comcast, it's 43.6 and 13.1 over-the-air broadcast with a digital outdoor antenna. 2 o'clock in the afternoon is when the replay comes up, 13.6 YouTube, 8 o'clock tonight, 4.6 Biz TV. When it's all said and done, you can go to Ventura Broadcasting webpage, venturabroadcasting.com, hook up with Connect with Me, and you'll see most of our shows there the last 5 or 5.5 years. Today we'll talk religion, we'll talk politics. How do the two mix? How do they intertwine? Do they? Can you take the religion out of politics? Boy, I don't know. We'll talk to our guest about that today. He's a return guest, but you might recall last Thursday, it was one of the most incredible sights in politics I had ever seen. A rare public appearance by George W. Bush and Barack Obama, two presidents on the opposite side of the spectrum, agreeing on the same thing and giving their views on the state of our national politics today. They gave strong opinions, although they did not mention the current president who is in office right now by name. Take a listen to both ex-presidents.
George W. Bush has avoided politics since leaving office, but today the former president seemed to throw down the gauntlet, warning of the rise of, quote, bullying and prejudice in America.
Bigotry seems emboldened. Our politics seems more vulnerable to conspiracy theories and outright fabrication. We've seen our discourse degraded by casual cruelty. At times it can seem like the forces pulling us apart are stronger than the forces binding us together.
The former president never mentioned the current president, but much of the speech seemed directly aimed at the words and policies of Donald Trump.
We've seen nationalism distorted into nativism, forgotten the dynamism that immigration has always brought to America.
And while Trump has been criticized for being slow to condemn racists, Bush drew a bright line.
Bigotry or white supremacy in any form is blasphemy against the American creed.
Former President Obama was also making a rare public appearance today, campaigning for Democratic candidates in New Jersey and Virginia.
Hello, everybody!
No mention of President Trump, but also no mistaking his target.
Some of the politics we see now, we thought we put that to bed. It's the 21st century, not the 19th century. Come on.
Live in our studio to talk about this now is Pastor D J Criner of Fresno, and he's been here before. He's a return guest. And before I go to break, welcome to the program, DJ.
Thanks for having me.
Hey, mention the church. Got to mention the church.
Oh, yes, St. Louis Baptist Church,
That's
1550
right.
East Reverend Chester Riggins Avenue.
That's right.
West Fresno.
Well, we're glad you're here this morning.
thank
I
you.
really
Thank
appreciate
you.
it
Thank
very
you.
much. And so you're also part of Faith in the Valley, right?
Correct.
All right.
Correct.
So knowing what's going on locally, and we'll get into the Gary Bredefeld stuff in just a
Okay.
minute, what do you think of the two ex-presidents and what they had to say? Pretty interesting, huh? Two guys that didn't agree on anything, yet they came together on this last week.
Yeah. I mean, whenever there's something as devastating as hurricanes that have hit our country and the things that are occurring in our nation, but especially the hurricane relief efforts, I mean, it does unite individuals together, from President Bush, both Bushes really, to Clinton to Obama, but to hear both presidents, both of our former presidents, who are from different sides of the aisle, you know, conservative and liberal, Democratic, Republican, come together to speak against bigotry, hatred, and without naming our president, of course, in all respect that is due, but just speaking against some of the things that have divisively attempted to destroy our country, was just a breath of fresh air. It really was.
Would the fact that, let's say they had mentioned Donald Trump by name, would that have lessened the impact of their speeches?
I think so. I think it would have caused further division. I think that even though at the moment our president has continued to say some things that are very divisive, hurtful, and painful, not just by race, but also by social class and by gender as well. And then, of course, to widows of our military as well. I think to name him specifically as former presidents would be a sign of disrespect in a way. I'm very proud of the way that our previous presidents handled themselves. We all know exactly where their remarks were made to. I think that's something that me and you can say, specifically calling out our president for some of the things that he said. But as former presidents, there is a code that many presidents have, that our presidents have. You never tear down a president who is currently in office. And unfortunately, our current president doesn't see the same. You're really not supposed to tear down a previous president as well.
Right.
You uphold that office.
Right, because it's seen around the world as a weakness.
Yes, sir. Absolutely.
By other countries.
Absolutely.
Wow, why is that ex-president tearing down the
Absolutely.
current one?
And we never want other countries to see us as a weak country.
Yeah.
Even though inside of our country, internally, we are facing so much division. Externally, we want a country to see us as united. That's currently what we're supposed to stand for, right? The United States. And if presidents are against each other, it shows a strong sign of weakness, brother, and we can't have that.
Yeah, no love lost between Obama and, of course, Donald Trump. But then
Right.
on the other side of the coin, no love lost between the Bush family
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
Donald Trump, too, because you saw
Absolutely.
what he did to Jeb Bush during the campaign.
Absolutely.
Tore him down to pieces.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
name calling and all the rest. So,
Absolutely.
you know, it did nothing but divide the Republican Party, even though they won the White House.
Absolutely.
It's amazing.
And we continue to see the division taking place.
Yeah.
I mean, when you're disrespecting an individual that stood and fought for our country, that ran against President Obama, that Obama never criticized his courage, his stick-to-itiveness when it came to fighting in our country. But when President Trump attempted to tear John McCain down, that was a sign of utter disrespect, in my personal opinion, to an individual not only that's a part of your party, but a man that has fought for our country.
Yeah.
And it's painful to see, man. It really is.
Yeah, of course, John McCain, a prisoner of war during
Absolutely.
Vietnam, no question about it. He served 7 years, and when the Viet Cong said, "We'll let you go," he said, "No, let them stay. I'll stay. I'll
Additional
remain
5
for
years.
another 5 years."
Yes,
I
sir.
guess so. A lot of torture, and now he's got brain cancer. We're going to continue our conversation with DJ Criner. He's a pastor here in the city of Fresno, well respected. We'll talk race. Divisions on the other side. We'll talk politics and religion, how all this intertwines. And yes, we'll even talk about City Councilman Gary Bredefeld and maybe even Brooke Ashton. Back in just a moment.
Not sure what you're watching? Want to see what's coming up next? Or just want to browse what's on without the hassle of flipping channels? Your wish has come true. Now you can view schedules for all the digital TV channels available in the Central Valley. Get local weather updates and forecasts, and listen to nationally syndicated Biz Talk Radio, all on KVHF 4.1. Rescan your TV now, then tune in to Digital Channel 4.1 to start enjoying the all-new TV Guide.
Frigidaire. We introduced the first home freezer, the first pulsator agitator washer. And now we introduce the Frigidaire Orbit Clean dishwasher, designed with a unique wash arm that gives you 4 times more water coverage for a consistently better clean. Frigidaire, over 90 years of legendary innovation.
See the full line of Frigidaire appliances at Ventura TV Electronics and Appliances.
Back here on the program with the one and only DJ Criner. I'm glad you're here. So nationally, I want to talk nationally first before I move into the local scene.
Sure.
You know, I was born, gosh, in the 50s, and I remember the 60s, how racially divided we were. We all remember Rodney King, obviously. Do we seem to be racially divided much more now than we were back in the 60s, even the early 90s?
I believe, in my personal opinion, and then of course talking to those that were there in the 60s, because I wasn't. I came 20 years after, right? But hearing about the stories of that horrific era, where at the same time it was so empowering for African Americans and for white Americans and Brown, who came together for the purpose of pushing the Civil Rights Act that could be passed. I believe that now, I think the image of racism is being pushed to a higher level because of some remarks that are made from individuals that are up top. I think it's pulling out this systematic racism that has been breeding into the fabric of our country, and I don't think that it's worse. I just think it's more evident because of social media, because of television. In the 60s, remember, there was you had a couple of stations that would advertise what was going on in Selma and in Alabama and places like that. Absolutely. And now, I mean, for the most part, many people, especially this generation, doesn't watch CNN or MSNBC or Fox News or Me Television, right? They look on Facebook, Twitter, social media, Instagram, and all that good stuff to get the majority and bulk of their news. So with that being done, especially what was done in Clovis, at our local level, and then what has been done across the nation, people are just tweeting it, basically. And so that you can tweet something and hide behind a tweet, or you can post something and hide behind a Facebook without showing your face on the book. And so with that being done, it does seem as if racism is heightened to a higher level. And in my personal opinion, I just think it's more publicized now.
All right, I'll get into the Gary Bredefeld stuff in just a few minutes here. But you've had, and I'm surprised he hasn't called yet, but you have, we have these regular callers that call up. I don't know who they are, but I know who one is. He calls all the time. But some will say, if they want to pick a fight with you, and I'm not looking to pick a fight with you, believe me.
I know you're not, brother. I know.
But you'll have someone on the other side of the spectrum say, look, we've come a long way. African Americans have made progress. And we had an African American president who said he was going to bring the country together and didn't do it. How do you respond to that? It's not the first time you've heard that. You probably hear that over and over again all the time.
Right.
So what is the right response to that?
I think the response is for individuals to stop trying to tell African Americans how they should feel and think when they're not African American. Yeah. No one has felt, with the exception of our indigenous brothers, our Native American brothers, no one has felt the pain of being a black man or a Native American like a Native American or a black man. I can never tell a Native American how they're supposed to feel on Christopher Columbus Day or on Thanksgiving when we're celebrating, just as I don't expect or don't want anyone to tell me how to feel as an African American. Yes, President Obama was an amazing accomplishment to have an African American in office, but that's one out of the 45 that have been presidents. And to expect one individual who was an African American who faced such criticism coming in and such harsh treatment coming in to unite a country that many didn't even really truly want him in office because of the color of his skin is painful. If President Obama would have said half as much as what President Trump has said, they probably would have had him impeached a long time ago. If coming into office, if President Obama would have had, 3 marriages, would have talked about groping women, what they would have done with women, I don't think President Obama would have made it past the preliminaries. So to look at Obama and to say, well, look, this is your accomplishment is painful for us, because I would never look at a woman as Sister Hillary Clinton getting into the place of being a Democratic nominee and telling all women, look, stop complaining about not having the same equal pay or equal rights as men because a woman has made it at least to that office. That's not good. You never look at one person and say one person has opened the door and now all blacks should be acceptable. Jackie Robinson just opened the door, but look how many years it took for others to come through the door. President Obama, yes, he opened the door for us to come in, but man, they beat him up every time he was through that door. So yes, I'm grateful that he got in office. Praise God for it. But brother, I'm not satisfied.
So, what are you not satisfied with?
I'm really not. I'm not satisfied with the fact that our country hasn't accepted the fact that racism, or excuse me, that slavery was the worst crime, the absolute worst crime to ever come to this country, with the exception of what occurred to our Native American brothers. I don't think our country's even accepted that fact, has apologized internally for that fact. Juneteenth is not celebrated. There's an episode of Blackish that just came out a couple of weeks ago where they highlighted Juneteenth and how Juneteenth was our liberating day, our liberation month. And it's not talked about whatsoever. Whenever we speak about, as African Americans, what occurred to us just less than 200 years ago, it's almost seen as keep your mouth shut, be grateful for what you have, be grateful to Colin Powell's and the Condoleezza Rice and the President Obama's, without thinking about the Medgar Evers, the Dr. Martin Luther Kings, the Stokely Carmichaels, the African Americans that were killed just so that we can have a seat at the table. And I think sometimes we forget that the civil rights was just in the 60s. We're only in the beginning of the 2000s, 2017. It has not been that long removed, and we can still see oppression and systematic racism still occurring. And because of our faith in our God that we serve, it pushes us to keep moving, but it doesn't hide the pain that we've experienced and are still experiencing as a country and as a people in the country.
How do you get past that point and to make sure that nothing like that ever happens again, obviously, but to make sure that people, but see, as a white man, the white man will never understand,
of course,
what you went through, what your relatives went through,
right?
What slavery was all about, because we didn't live it,
right.
So, is that just a fact that you'll never overcome that?
No, I think we will overcome it. But it takes us to be able to see a person and to hear their story and then to appreciate the story that we're hearing. Me and you met, a couple of months back, right?
Right,
and
a
when
few months.
Exactly. And so when we met each other, the initial conversation.
It was during the holidays.
It was, last November,
Christmas.
last December.
Yeah.
When we met each other, our conversation wasn't how it is today, as when we saw each other and we started talking to each other, because we didn't know each other. So there was a little tension. Okay, who am I dealing with? What am I talking to? Who am I talking to? But as we get to know each other, and I'm hearing your story of your kids and the things that you do when you leave work, how you study, it makes me appreciate your job. And I think the problem is we only see people of their color and we never see a person for their story. So as a white man, I appreciate the fact that you're a white brother that has a story. And I pray you appreciate the fact I'm a black man that has a story. What we try to do is we try to become colorblind.
But trying to walk in somebody's shoes is almost impossible.
I don't think we're supposed to walk in each other's shoes. That's not the job. That's what Atticus Finch said in a To Kill a Mockingbird. You'll never know a person until you step in their shoes and walk around a little bit. But please remember, that's a fictional story. It's not reality. We're not supposed to walk into each other's shoes, but we are supposed to see the wear and tear on each other's shoes and appreciate the fact that those shoes that are worn and torn because you've been walking in them for so long. And I appreciate the fact that you still have shoes on your feet.
Can the white man ever understand the pain of the black man in this country?
No, just as a man is never able to understand the pain of a woman that's going into labor. But a man that's standing by his wife as she's going into labor, as he holds her hand, he feels the pain that she's going through, and he appreciates the fact that she's going through the pain to give birth. I think a white man needs to feel the pain without never being able to truly understand it, because you'll never understand that delivery process. But when we stand together and walk together as sisters and brothers, no matter the color of their skin, you'll be able to understand my pain. But guess what? There's pain as a white man that I'll never begin to understand. I'll never be able to understand how a white man feels when he comes in contact with African Americans during an oppressed time as we're in right now. And he has to sit there and try to figure out, well, how do I speak without being insensitive?
Before I go to break, Getting back to Bush and Obama.
Sure.
How much inner strength did it take these men, these ex-presidents, to hang on a second?
Sure.
Here. Hang on, caller. Get to you in a moment. How much inner strength did it take for them? Because Bush rarely comes out and speaks. I mean,
right.
he hasn't been in office since what, 2008?
Right.
Okay, 9 years.
Mm-hmm.
How much strength did it take him to come out and give this speech, as well as Obama, who hasn't been out of office all that long?
Right. Right.
Did it take a lot of inner strength on the part of these men? Would you surmise?
Yes, I believe it took the strength of a love of a country and saw that the country was pulling apart. So it took a white man and a black man who held the highest office in the world, in my personal opinion, to set aside their differences and their political agendas and the parties that they are affiliated with, and said, look, at this point, it's not about Democrat or Republican or black and white. It's important for the two latest presidents that this current generation and the generation in front of that, has seen and known.
Who were they speaking on behalf of? The human race? The American people?
I really believe so. And I think it was a powerful moment because it showed America that a black and... See, I think people have to look and see that Bush is white, Obama is black. And right now in this country, black and white are so torn apart that it's not, I've never seen it like this. And I wasn't around in the 60s like you were.
Yeah.
This, and I've told my mother, this is the most racially divided time I've ever seen.
Why?
I believe that finally the racism that was in the fabric of the country is now starting to sprout out.
Because of Donald Trump?
I wouldn't say directly because of Mr. Trump, or President Trump. I believe President Trump has given individuals a bigger voice and a greater platform in order to say what they want to say. Whenever you have there's a statement that is said in our clergy that a congregation is direct representative of its leader. So if the leader is humorous, you're going to have a humorous congregation. Right. If a leader is bold and will say whatever, and brash and will say whatever he's going to say, a congregation 9 times out of 10 will follow. And I believe that our president is extremely bold and will just speak his mind and say the first thing that comes to his mind without a filter, without anyone saying, okay, you know what, you may want to kind of check your comments. And I believe that our country, people are saying whatever they want to say without thinking twice about it.
Okay, caller, you're on the air. Go ahead.
Yes, hi, Pastor. I totally agree with you, and I really am kind of enjoying listening to what you guys are talking about.
Yes, sir.
I think that I'm an Armenian American. I was born here, but grew up hearing the stories, the horrific things that happened to them during the genocide, and we, that was about 1.5 million Armenians, and then we think about what the Jews went, 6 million, and then you think about how many Africans were killed and died during the slave trades, and the number jumps up to like 60 million. It's a unfathomable, so I think I have a little bit of understanding, and my question to you is, as an Armenian, we've grown up and we kind of have an idea of what we want in terms of justice for what happened to our people. We want reparations, and Turkey doesn't accept the fact that that their government even committed these atrocities. So we have kind of a direct when we step up to the political arena, whether it's to speak up about issues, or in the church, we have specific goals, or I guess specific things that we want as a whole, as a people. In reparations, our lands back. People that were killed and had their homes taken for them. I think there's even been a number of insurance lawsuits. And I'm sure for the African American or the African American community, that is got to be huge. And I mean, is there a general consensus of what the African American community, whether it's here or abroad, or, general, is looking for in terms of justice for these things that happened over these several decades? And I think maybe what you said, understanding and getting educated, and letting people learn about this history so we don't repeat it. These are scary times, and I think that we really need to do what we're doing today, is talking to people and educating them. And,
okay.
Thank you. That's my comments, and those are my questions. I appreciate it. I'll take the answer over there. Thanks.
Great. Thanks for the call. Go ahead. You got the floor.
Oh. Well, first of all, to the caller, man, I can sense your pain, frustration, and I can also sense the justice that you're seeking for in your heart, man. I really do. And as a African American man who knows not about the injustice and the pain that you experience and your people experience, I stand with you, man. And I tell you, brother, I hear you. To be quite honest with you, as a people, I can't speak for all of our people. I'm not the greatest. I'm not Dr. King. I'm not my grandmother. I'm just a young black kid that's a pastor of a church, man. But as a believer, our Bible tells us in Proverbs 30:8-9, it says that as a man, a good leader is a person that advocates for those that don't have a right to or don't have a place to advocate for themselves, to be a voice for those that don't have a voice. What we're looking for, man, is really at this point not reparations. We were promised reparations, man, when we were released from slavery, 40 acres and a mule. And to be quite honest with you, I'm still waiting on my 40 acres, and I don't want a mule. Just give me a nice car. I'm fine with it, right? I think the one thing that we're seeking is a deeper understanding of the pain that we experience on a regular basis simply because of what was instilled into a very divisive yet united country when we came over here.
Where does God come into all of this?
Oh, man,
where
John,
does the Lord come in?
brother.
Where does religion come in?
Oh, brother.
Okay, because what you're telling me is, and I do have to go to break, but
Sure.
but so what I hear you saying is, hey, don't as a black American, you're saying to other people, don't tell me to just forget about it.
Right.
These were my people
Absolutely.
that were enslaved.
Absolutely.
Even though I wasn't there and I didn't feel the pain personally, these were my relatives, my friends, this goes to my ancestry.
Yes, sir.
So I'm not going to just forget about it and sweep it under the rug like it didn't happen.
Mm-hmm.
Is that what you're asking for? Just a little bit of understanding from the other side
Yeah.
as to what happened.
I think what we're looking
recognizing what happened, recognizing how these people were treated.
And the key word is recognizing and seeing it and acknowledging that it actually happened. So when we make mistakes, we're taught as children to acknowledge the fact that we made a mistake and to apologize for it without justification.
What does the
for why it
Bible
happened.
say, though?
The Bible tells us we are to forgive. The Bible says if a man slaps you on the cheek, you are to offer him the other cheek. Now, realistically, what that is saying is not literally saying for you to turn the other cheek so they can hit you. What it's saying is you're not supposed to seek revenge for what a person did to us. And as Christians, that's one of the main things that was taught to us that our ancestors taught, even through slavery. I mean, our ancestors were taught that God would deliver, that Christ was the Redeemer, that vengeance is mine, says the Lord. And so, John, what we teach as great as possible is not to forgive and forget, but it is our job to forgive, but never forget.
Yeah, and can the black American ever forgive the white man for slavery?
I think the black American has already done that by way of fighting in so many wars, by way of voting for 44 presidents, absolutely, by way of building a country that has not yet built the African American life, that has poured more into a country that really didn't pour into them until as of recently. Right. I believe there's a statement that one of our mothers of our church, that JaPaul White, who was a member, stated that when people tell us to love our country, I think over the time we have shown as African American race, we actually love this country more than any other race has ever attempted to love the country.
Right.
Because no matter the oppression, we still continue to pour into the country called the United States of America, no matter how we're treated.
Right. Caller, I'm going to put you on hold for a moment because I got to take a quick commercial break. Is that okay? 436 MeTV, option 11. Back with DJ Criner in just a moment.
When you're looking for KitchenAid innovation and quality, who has the answers, the selection, the price? Ventura TV Appliance. With billions in nationwide appliance buying power, more than Home Depot and Best Buy combined, we'll help you save. Our low prices on Energy Star qualified KitchenAid appliances save you energy and money, and pay no interest on select models when paid in full within 12 months. Ventura TV Appliance, serving you since 1951.
The following is another list of things you will not hear on MeTV programs. Man cave, baby bump, whatevs. Double half-calf mochaccino, full hog, redonkulous, totes adorbs, hella, holla, YOLO, cray-cray. And MeTV is still Kardashian-free. This is what you will hear on MeTV programs.
Welcome, Benham. The Twilight Zone. About bulls.
I object, Your Honor.
Mr. Grant.
I hear you right. You heard me right.
MeTV. Thanks for listening.
Back here on the program, DJ Criner is here, and we have a call waiting. Go ahead, caller. You're on the air with our guest today. What's your question? What's your comment?
My comment is that before becoming a Muslim a year and a half ago, I was Jewish. And we Jews were enslaved in Africa for 800 years. So where's our reparation? Where's some payback for it? You can't hold things because it just eats you inside. You got to let go, and you got to continue with your life. And how can we hold the black people responsible, or Africans responsible today for something that happened hundreds of years ago? None of them did it, that we're here today. And none of the white people today have slaves. You got to let it go, get on with your life, and move forward. Thank you.
Okay. He hung up before I could ask him a question. I wanted to know if he, he sounded like he switched religions from the Jewish to the Muslim, but I wonder if his ancestors were from Israel, if he has Jewish blood in him. I don't know. Caller, if you're listening, call back, because I'd like to know the answer to that question, why you switched. But to answer, his question, I've heard a comment like that many times over, probably a million times over. I wasn't responsible. I wasn't even born. So I don't have any slaves. I don't believe in slavery. I never have. So how do you answer that?
Well, in Scripture, and that's where we go back to in order to find justification for our actions, because there are some individuals that feel like, we should blame current whites for what their ancestors did to us. And that is not something that we preach or we push. And a lot of African Americans do not promote that whatsoever, because of our full belief that you give every individual an opportunity to kind of show them who they are. But in the Bible, David does an awesome gesture. His predecessor, Saul, was very divisive to him. So what David does is, in order to show Saul's family that he is not holding the same grudge against Saul, what he does is he offers Saul's family an
hang on, caller. Go ahead. Hang on.
He offers Saul's family an opportunity to come to his table and sit and eat, to show that all things are forgiven. And I think as a people, what our job is not to hold our current brothers and sisters who are not kissed by heaven's rays responsible. But I think it is very important that if a race of folks feel as if they have been treated wrong by another race of folks, that it's not up to that current race to apologize.
You're talking about the people that are racist today. The uprising in Charlottesville, for example,
and you
white
still see
supremacists that are out to get the black man.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is you still see it. So for my brother that called in, he's not those that were enslaved by African people. There is no evidence of that today in this country. Currently in this country, we still see racism as evident by Charlottesville, as evident by whenever there is a shooting of an unarmed African American or shooting of an armed African American, immediately the red flags fly up and it's black versus white. That's not something that as an African American I like to see every time I turn on the news. Or whenever there's comments that are made about the kneeling of Colin Kaepernick or many of those individuals in the NFL, immediately the first thing that is pushed out is black versus white. That shows us that racism is still in the fabric of this country. And I don't think one person is asking, and as you just heard, I'm not asking for reparations. Would it be nice?
Yeah.
Yes, but
and
at
you're
the
not
same,
holding me responsible.
Absolutely,
or anybody,
man.
Because you're
prove yourself. You know.
Right.
Yeah, just as I hope that you expect me to prove myself to you, you know. But to state that there is that slavery, the idea of slavery still doesn't exist. To be quite honest with you, in ways it does. Whenever you have an NFL owner that tells his players to stay standing, and if you don't do your job, I'm going to get rid of you.
That's Colin right there.
Yeah.
What do you think he was kneeling about? What was he protesting in your eyes?
Right. So Colin Kaepernick originally was protesting the treatment of African Americans at the hands of law enforcement. So remember last year there was this uprising of
numerous shootings.
Yes, man, like left and right. I mean, Ferguson happened a few years ago, and then you had Philandro Castro, you had Eric Gardner, you had all these divisive, Castillo, still yes. And originally, Kaepernick set for the national anthem during the preseason game. And then after speaking with a retired a vet, a former military man who was active in the military, that gentleman told him to show a deeper respect by simply kneeling for the national anthem. When Mr. Kaepernick started to kneel for the national anthem, of course, that sparked the uprising of the disrespect of the flag.
Because initially he was sitting, and then Jed York, the primary owner of the 49ers,
Absolutely.
came to him and said, hey, look, you might consider taking a knee.
And he did it. And he took the knee. And as he never spoke negative of the national anthem.
Right. Or the military.
Or the military. To be quite honest with you, there were plenty of vets and those that were in military uniform that came to the support of his kneeling. Because of what the flag stands for. Is he
discriminated against now?
Absolutely. There's no ifs, buts about it.
By not being hired
Absolutely.
by a team?
Colin Kaepernick has become a martyr for the movement, the current movement of bringing this idea of oppression to light. Absolutely. And then the initial cause or the reason for the kneel has now kind of been swayed into a different discussion.
And here's I'm gonna throw a question out of left field. Is
Sure.
there any chance that the black community or Faith in the Valley, would you think about this, maybe reaching out to Colin Kaepernick, having him come to the Valley here and talking about his experience?
It would be awesome, but to be honest with you, Mr. Kaepernick doesn't do public appearances or speeches because from what I've been told. Now we have a
have you guys tried?
We have a member of our church who now plays for the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Out.
Yes.
Okay.
Who plays for the Pittsburgh Steelers, who around the league, they know that Kaepernick doesn't do public appearances because it pulls the attention on him instead of the cause. He's not an NFL player at the moment. No team will hire him. I mean, you have people who haven't thrown as many passes as he had in one Super Bowl game that are under contract, and he still is not under contract.
We'll take the call. Go ahead. Caller, you've been patient. I appreciate your time.
John and Mr. Kramer, is I right saying that? Criner.
Yes, sir.
Got it. Good morning to you.
Good morning.
Listen, just a couple questions.
Sure.
Here's one of my questions. What would it take for blacks to get more respect from the white people, if you want to call it, or other races? That's my first question.
Okay.
And here's where I get view. I won't be Trump, but I'll tell it like it is a little bit.
Okay.
So you probably already know. When blacks, let me ask you this as a question: would blacks get more respect if they didn't treat their women like dirt sometimes? And white people do it too. But it seems like we get more, it seems like the percent is a little higher with blacks that they cannot keep a family together. And if you have a family, you're one of the few percent that are doing good as a black couple.
So
and that's one of my questions. Do you think they would get more respect? And another question I have, if a black person, a driver, gets pulled over and he did what the officer asked him to do, I don't think we would have what we have today. If they just listen to the officer, and even though they do get discriminated, I agree with you, but if they follow through what the officer pulled them over for and fulfilled their obligation as American citizen, I don't think we would have the shooting it is today.
Okay.
And we wouldn't be here talking about this.
Okay.
For me, I would. Okay, those are my questions.
Okay, I wrote
and I could dialogue with you if you like.
I have no problem with dialoguing if that's what we want to do.
I wrote all three of those down, and that segues into my next segment with Gary Bredefeld.
Yeah, and I appreciate you being there.
Thank you.
I love the Word of God. I am a Christian like yourself, and I believe the same things you believe in.
All right.
Thank you for being there.
All right, thank you. Thank you very
Okay,
much.
welcome.
I want to take a quick break. I want to, and I will let you answer these three questions because these are the exact questions that Gary Bredefeld brought up during his little 9-minute rant during the city council meeting. A lot of people think that wasn't the appropriate place to do that. It was City Hall. You're supposed to talk about city issues during the agenda, not about national politics that really kind of don't have anything to do with Fresno. 436 MeTV option 11. Back in a moment.
The new Frigidaire Professional line at Ventura TV Video Appliance. Enjoy generous-sized cooktops and sauté or simmer with ease, while true convection ovens offer even baking and juicy roasting perfection. Foods stay their freshest in spacious refrigerators with convenient controls and clear filtered ice and water. Easy to clean surfaces reduce fingerprints, and the quietest of dishwashers makes cleanup a snap. The new Frigidaire Professional line at Ventura TV Video Appliance.
When you like Ventura TV Appliance on Facebook, it's nice. But when you love the KitchenAid appliances we deliver, it's even better. Our website is cool, and it's a good place to start. But you really should touch the merchandise before you buy. Save big with KitchenAid. Right now, get up to a $1,000 prepaid MasterCard when you purchase select KitchenAid appliances. Get the best selection, price, and service in town without waiting. Come in to Ventura TV Appliance and touch the merchandise today.
All right, back here on the program, and just recently, I do have a call here. I'm going to put this call on a hold, though, because I got to get to this. Hang on, caller. Get to you in a moment here. I got to get to the Gary Bredefeld rant. It took place about a month and a half ago now at City Hall. A lot of people think this was an inappropriate place. The city of Fresno has now hired an attorney to defend Gary Bredefeld and what he's done, because the city clerk has now complained about it. Many council members have complained, including Oliver Baines. They didn't like it. And a lot of people are ranting about this online, about Gary Bredefeld being very outspoken about a lot of social issues that are going on in our country. He started off by talking and ranting against the NFL players taking a knee. Now, remember, Gary Bredefeld is a former military man, served in the Navy, so he did serve his country, felt he had a right to speak up about these players that are taking a knee. He felt it was disrespecting the flag, disrespecting the country, and disrespecting the military. But then he went on to bring in abortion. He went on to talk about racial divide in this country, and the grievances and disagreements with what he had with this country, the United States of America. Want to pull up soundbite number one. Gary Bredefeld, number one. Play it.
I have an unabashed love of this country. This country is great. It provides free education for every child through high school. It provides free meals in schools. Grit and God-given talent and ability, the sky's the limit. And we see that with those multi-million-dollar athletes. They've achieved their God-given abilities. Every Sunday we see it. But I, too, have grievances with this country. I don't see everything as being perfect. I disagree with giving Iran $150 billion when they're a sponsor of terrorism and they hate our guts. I disagree with the weakening of criminal laws, Prop 47 and 57. I disagree with people being on death row spending 20 to 25 years when they've committed heinous acts and they never get the death penalty. I disagree with gender-neutral bathrooms. I disagree with the taking down of our statues and eradicating our history. I disagree with the legalization of drugs in our country. There's 1 million abortions in our country every year. I hate that. And when you talk about racism, in the United States, black children are aborted at 3 times the rate of white children. Hispanic children are aborted at 1.5 times the rate. Whatever the intentions of the abortion industry, it's a racist institution. And I don't understand why those athletes are not taking a knee for those children.
So getting back to the last part of what Bredefeld said, he said that U.S. black children are aborted 3 times the rate of white children, Hispanic 1.5 times the rate. Abortion, the industry itself, is a racist institution. I don't understand why those athletes aren't taking a knee for all of those children. Mm-hmm. And you have obviously want to respond to that.
Yeah, well, you know, I met with the council member probably about 2 days, 3 days after his comments, rants. And again, just as the caller so wonderfully said, blacks, as Mr. Bredefeld said, which in its own right is very disparaging to call us blacks instead of giving us an opportunity to have people or a man or a woman attached to it is very disrespectful. You don't hear me call white Americans whites. We give respect, but nevertheless, to bring statistics that are far misleading, to show that African Americans are at a level of almost inhumane. We're actually like almost if we're inhumane. That the institution that aborts children does more of African American children than whites is far misleading.
And like the caller said, blacks disrespect their women,
which is not true. The latest statistic that came out did show that, and again, it's painful to say this because it speaks negative against my white brothers and sisters.
You're free to say anything you want.
But thank you, John. But if we were to pull statistics out, we would show that white men do abuse white women more than black men abuse black men. Black women, excuse me. Right. My father works in a prison. He has been working in a prison for the last 37 years.
Why don't we talk about that, though?
Because the inferior race is always put on the spotlight for the statistics that are negative. Right. And it's very painful, it's hurtful. So when we talk about the fact that the idea of slavery doesn't still exist, when it really does. The movie Birth of a Nation, the original one, I believe it was in 1917, that the current president stood and said it was the greatest movie that was saw. It showed African Americans as cannibalists that would go around raping white women and eating the flesh of whites. And the Ku Klux Klan were seen as the saviors to come in to destroy these cannibals, right? So they put African Americans on a level at the time that were seen as killers, violent, those that you stay away from. And Mr. Bredefield's comments, along with the gentleman that called, you do the same exact thing, my brothers, when you give statistics that are far misleading. African Americans only represent about 12% of the nation. So the statistics are far misleading when you look at 12% of the nation versus about 47% of white Americans in the nation, and you put a scale ranking of those that abuse and those that don't. When you look at mass murders, and again, this is painful to say, but the majority of our mass shooters are not African American, but that's never talked about. And black folks never talk about it as well, because we do not want to put a level or rating of comparison of white versus black when it comes to issues such as violence, who does the worst to people, who treats people the worst. To my brother that called that talks about the way that we treat women, unfortunately, the president of the United States is not a black man, and he publicly stated the way he treats women. And the majority of the people that condemn and speak how black people treat our women voted for this man to be the president of the United States. The man that's right now in the news for his treatment towards actresses is not a black man. It's a white man. And it's story after story from the 80s all the way up until now of how he sexually harassed and to some even raped women. But we never bring that up as an African American
These are
race.
allegations.
These are allegations. Allegations, right? But we never bring that up because it's not our goal to say white folks are worse than black folks. I thought we were a country where we're seen as trying to build each other up so that we're equal on the same playing field and all are equal in the eyes of God.
Caller, make it quick here. We're kind of short on time. Glad you called. DJ Criner is here. Go ahead.
Hi. What happens when blacks commit acts of racism against the Hispanic community?
African Americans against Hispanic?
Immigrant farm worker community, because they know they won't go to the police due to their immigration status. That is something that you can get Chief Jerry Dyer on the phone about and ask him, or you can ask the immigrant farm workers themselves.
Okay.
That's never talked about.
So your question is...
And secondly, as far as slavery goes, blacks are very proud that they have one of the first civilizations ever in the world, and that was the Egyptian Empire. And the Egyptians enslaved the Jews for some 400 years. So blacks are responsible for slavery themselves. Blacks were enslaved by their own people in Africa, but yet they blame the whites for enslaving them. They don't talk about how Jews owned the slave trade. No, none of that is discussed. he hasn't mentioned it. The Black Lives Matter rallies that get out of control and start tearing the cities up. Can you imagine if there was a Black Lives Matter protest rally every time a black person killed another black person? They would happen in every single city, every single hour, all across this nation.
Okay.
But they must think it's okay when a black kills another black, because there's never no Black Lives Matter protest rally when that happens. It's only when a police officer does it.
So let me allow.
Let him respond, okay, caller?
Yeah, and I'll try to keep it as brief as possible. Again, once again, whenever there is a issue where we're, as an African-American race, addressing the systematic racism that is occurring in our nation, there's always statistics that are brought up about why black African-Americans, and please, if you wouldn't mind, give us the respect that is due to us, and instead of simply calling us blacks, it would be amazing if you would address us as African Americans or black people. That would be awesome. Thank you very much. Right. But let me
hang on, caller. Go ahead, DJ.
Sorry, John. But whenever there is an African American shooting, no matter who it is, if it's a black man that's killed a black man or a white man that's killed a white man, there is always both prayer vigils and rallies that are held. Matter of fact, I just did one on Friday. But again, the difference is that when an officer shoots an unarmed African American, that officer is charged to uphold the law. When an African American or white man, because there's not just black on black, there's white on black, there's white on white, there's brown on brown. The difference is that individual is charged in a court of law for their crimes. So I don't want to get to the whole officer versus a civilian, because there's two different causes.
I just want to roll this piece of videotape from Gary Bredefeld now.
Sure.
The caller mentioned, when a black driver gets pulled over, just do what the police ask you to do.
Right,
and
right,
Gary
right.
Bredefeld
said
the same thing, and that's Gary Bredefeld number 3, Carrie. Bredefeld number 3. If we could roll that, here's the rant by Gary Bredefeld.
So what should these multi-million-dollar athletes really be protesting and fighting to change? Well, I think crime, drugs, gangs, and a culture of victimization. Stop promoting the belief that if you're black, brown, or any person of color, if you're poor or any minority class, that you're an inherent victim in our society. Every person, regardless of color, gender, socioeconomic status, is equal under the law in this country and in the United States, and they can achieve success and realize the full potential of their God-given abilities. That is why people from all over the world want to come here. I suggest they promote hope and aspiration, not hate and victimization. They should also be encouraging respect for authority and police. If you're pulled over by the police, do what's requested. Be respectful. The interaction will end well for everyone, I can assure you.
I didn't catch that last part of his statement here in the studio, so I'll read it back. They should also be encouraging and have respect for authority and police. If you're pulled over by the police, do what's requested. Be respectful. The interaction will end well for everyone. I can assure you. The words of one Gary Bredefeld. Go ahead. You got the floor. We also have a caller.
Okay, I'll try to respect the caller so they can have time to address. Okay. Previous caller stated that why don't we just obey the rules of law enforcement, and everything will peacefully end. So did our council member. Unfortunately, haven't been around a lot of African Americans, and again, I really would wish individuals would not attempt to assume that every shooting or every interaction that goes negatively is as a result of an African American.
Don't paint everybody with a broad brush.
Absolutely, just like we don't seek to paint every officer as an officer that seeks to, disrespect an African American. But whenever an African American is shot or killed or mistreated, immediately it's the African American's fault. And unfortunately, that's not done for any other race, with the exception of sometimes my brown American brothers and my white brothers as well. Dylan Roos as well, not Dylan Roos, I'm sorry.
Dylan Noble.
Right. Yeah. And so when you have a Philandro Castro that was shot and killed, I believe it was in Philadelphia, and he told the officer, I have an unarmed, I have a gun, and I'm licensed to carry.
It might have been Minnesota.
Minnesota, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
And the officer asked him to reach for his permit. When he reached for his permit, the officer feared for his life and shot and killed him in the middle and right in the view of his child. The fear for your life, there are many individuals that fear the African American face, unfortunately, and there are African Americans that fear the badge. But there is respect that we have for law enforcement, just as there's respect that you have for law enforcement as well.
Right.
The problem is that we pit and we generalize individuals based on the color of their skin or a badge that they wear.
Caller, you have about 20 seconds to respond here. What's your comment? What's your question? Quickly.
My comment would be there was a great man in 1966 who, had some marital infidelities and a man of color, and he said that we should judge people not by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. And I think the point is nobody's perfect. Ye without sin, throw the first stone. And when the Reverend talks about systemic racism, I understand there's racism. There's people that have it, that harbor it in all walks of life, including law enforcement, still to this day. But when you say systemic, that means it's part of the system, and I disagree with the Reverend, and I'd love for him to point out who in the Fresno police community, in the district attorney's office, in the state of California is fomenting this systemic racism when we have a attorney, the main attorney, Bracera, is fighting everything. We have sanctuary status. I don't understand where you get this systemic racism validation.
All right. Thank you, caller. I appreciate it. Go ahead.
Okay.
You got the final word.
Thank you, sir. So
my relation. 3 minutes.
So the beauty about Fresno is that Fresno operates just a little bit different from a lot of cities across our nation. Our police chief is a Christian man. I have a wonderful relationship with Chief Dyer. That's my brother. That's my friend. Lisa Smetcamp, that's my girl. She's at the church. She comes over. Even Mims, there are things that we disagree on, but we have a good relationship. And the beauty about it is those that are operating those offices see the same thing that we see. We're not saying for a moment that systemic racism, as a result of systemic racism, that our police chief, our police department as a whole, our city attorneys, our city manager, our council members are racist. That's totally different from saying that racism exists. Because racism exists in the fabric of the country, whenever something is deeply rooted in the soil of it, eventually things start sprouting to the surface. That doesn't mean that people are racist. Do they say things that are borderline racist? Absolutely. Are we saying that all that do are racist? No, absolutely not. But again, the ability to hear people, to understand or attempt to try to understand where individuals are coming from is so important in order to kill what systematic racism has done. There has yet to be a full in-depth apology for what occurred in slavery. And again, there is evidence of that, man, even to this day. Whenever the idea of slavery is brought up,
you want the government to issue an official apology.
I believe that as a people, that's the one thing that our people is seeking for more than anything else, is a true in-depth apology for what was done. For people to say, get over it, you haven't been in the shoes that we're in. You don't feel what we feel every single day. And unfortunately, because we don't have an opportunity to, as you say, step in someone's shoes and truly feel it, we will never understand it. I'm not asking for folks to understand in depth what an African American is going through, because I'm not attempting to understand what my white brother or my Armenian brother went through. No way am I telling my Armenian brother to get over it, or my Jewish brother that was formerly, I think he said he was Muslim, I believe.
Yeah.
And because of the oppression that he experiences, maybe now Jewish, I'm not asking myself to try to understand what he's dealing with. But brother, here's the difference. I'm willing to listen and hear it. If a white brother was to tell me that he grew up his entire life and was treated different by African Americans, I would listen and hear, and that's the only way change will happen.
Carrie's giving me a rap. I gotta
go.
Oh
man, I wish we had more time.
I know. Can you come back?
Brother. Absolutely, man.
Okay.
Absolutely.
I'll call your assistant at the church and we'll get it going. Shania,
absolutely.
She's a great
She's
woman.
amazing. Yeah, Shanae's awesome.
I know. All right. Thanks, you,
John.
DJ Criner.
Yes, sir.
All right. Thanks for being on the show. One DJ Criner. Tomorrow, Coke Hallowell, and we'll talk about the San Joaquin River Parkway. Have a good day, everyone.